My mother-in-law prepared a fancy salad with a strange smell. It's a recipe I learned from a chef, she said. I pretended to love it and swapped it with my sister-in-law's salad, the one who always harassed and tried to humiliate me. 35 minutes later. When the poison isn't on the plate, but in the smile that serves it, every meal becomes a sentence. Jade was 32, but she had lived many lives in silence. Her youth wasn't measured in wrinkles or visible scars, but in the serene, almost calculated way she endured family tensions that most couldn't bear for 5 minutes. No one had prepared her for the world she had married into, much less for the family her husband Leon, whom she had been married to for 4 years, had brought her into, the Martinez de la Vega family. Old money, porcelain manners, secrets darker than the hardwood panels lining their walls. Leon, 36, was a good man, perhaps too good. His ability to avoid conflict wasn't prudence, it was blindness. He couldn't see how his mother, Leonore, crushed everything she couldn't control with elegance. And when Jade first entered that house, Leonore knew her empire was under threat. The invitation arrived as all things from Leonore did, elegant, perfumed, carefully worded to seem affectionate, but with a clear undertone of control. Family dinner, it said, as if that meant harmony instead of war in disguise. Jade felt unease the moment she read the card. Leon smiled sincerely when he received it, kissed his wife's cheek, and said enthusiastically, "My mother is trying to reach out." Jade didn't reply. She only thought, the queen does not share her throne. She defends it. The Martinez de la Vega mansion always demanded respect. White marble at the entrance, stained glass that filtered light as if it needed permission to enter, portraits of stern-faced ancestors silently passing judgment. When Jade and Leon arrived, they were greeted by the head maid, Clara, who gave a slight nod without a smile. That house held no warmth, only rules. Leonore appeared at the top of the staircase, as if perfectly staged. Her black silk dress clung elegantly to her frame, contrasting with her impeccably silver hair and agelessly smooth skin. She was 64, every year polished to the point of untouchable. Jade stepped forward to greet her politely, but Leonore only brushed her cheek with surgical coldness. "Jade," she said softly, almost maternally. "You look stunning tonight. Leon is a lucky man." And she smiled. A smile that promised not tenderness, but velvet-wrapped threat. Yennefer was already in the sitting room, white wine in hand, laughing with one of the cousins. The perfect daughter, the closest replica of Leonore, brilliant, ambitious, cruel. Jade greeted her without enthusiasm. She always felt watched by Yennefer, as if she were constantly searching for flaws in Jade's clothes, her posture, her soul. Dinner began promptly. A long table illuminated by a chandelier that looked like it weighed tons, glittering glassware, cutlery arranged with surgical precision. Guests took their seats like actors in a silent opera. Charles, Leonore's husband, was already in his place as always, expression blank, eyes vacant. The man was just another decorative piece, a voiceless patriarch. Jade took her seat next to Leon. Across from her, Yennefer wore her usual smug expression. At the head of the table, Leonore presided like an empress surveying her court. And then it happened. Leonore snapped her fingers elegantly. One of the maids approached with a covered dish and gently placed it in front of Jade. Leonore spoke, each word seeming to test the temperature of the air. "This is a special dish," she announced. "Inspired by a recipe I learned from a Michelin-starred chef in France. I made it with you in mind, Jade. I hope you enjoy it." Jade smiled, not because she believed in the kindness of the gesture, but because she knew that in this family, any visible emotion was a weakness. She looked at the plate. A salad. Arugula, slivered almonds, pomegranate seeds, shaved fennel, and a glistening vinaigrette that gave off a delicate scent, but with a discordant note. Something was off. Not rotten. Subtle. Chemical. As if the salad had been misted with bitter perfume. Jade feigned admiration. "What a beautiful presentation," she said, raising her fork. But she didn't eat. She watched. The conversation continued around her. The cousin talked about business. Charles mumbled something about politics. Yennefer laughed as if the world belonged to her. Jade adjusted her napkin over her lap. Then, so naturally it seemed accidental, she swapped her plate with Yennefer's. The latter didn't notice, too busy boasting about a recent promotion. When Jade looked back at Leonor, the woman was watching her. Not with surprise, but with something darker, understanding. Jade held her gaze. She said nothing. She lifted her fork, picked a leaf of arugula from Yennefer's plate, brought it to her mouth and chewed slowly, without swallowing, letting the taste spin on her tongue like a growing doubt. Then she swallowed. Yennefer, unaware, had already started eating the salad meant for Jade. Leon was still immersed in conversation with his father, oblivious to the battlefield that had opened between his mother and his wife. Only 7 minutes passed. Yennefer paused. Her smile faltered. Jade noticed it immediately, a small gesture, how Yennefer touched her stomach. Then came the sweat. Yennefer tried to hide it, drank water, faked a cough. Leonor remained impassive. "Are you all right, dear?" she asked with artificial sweetness. "Yes, just maybe the spices," Yennefer replied, but her voice was already trembling. Her skin turned pale. Then, without another word, she stood up abruptly. The chair scraped the floor. She fled the dining room. Silence. Only the distant sound of vomiting. Jade took a sip of wine, looked at Leonor. The woman looked back. This time, there were no smiles. Only recognition. The masks had fallen. "Delicious salad," Jade said quietly. "Truly unique. Would you share the recipe?" Leonor didn't answer. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for her wine glass. Charles lowered his newspaper. He watched the scene with a different kind of tension. It wasn't ignorance, it was complicity. He knew. He had always known. And then Jade understood something fundamental. She wasn't facing a petty woman, but a dangerous strategist, someone who had survived decades of subtle domination. Leonor didn't make mistakes. She didn't improvise. Every dish, every gesture, every silence had a purpose. This time, she had failed. But she wouldn't give up. Yennefer didn't return. Leon finally stood up to go look for her. Before leaving, he looked at Jade. "Do you think it was something she ate?" he asked. Jade smiled softly. "Maybe. Sometimes new ingredients cause unexpected reactions." Leonor narrowed her eyes. For the first time, she lost control of the conversation. Charles cleared his throat. Perhaps it would be wise to check the kitchen, just in case there was a mistake, he suggested. The word mistake floated in the air like a threat. When the maid returned to clear the dishes, Jade spoke to her in a low voice. "Did you prepare this dish?" The woman hesitated. Her eyes never left the floor. "I just followed instructions, ma'am." "Whose instructions?" Silence. "I just do what I'm told." The answer was firm, but not innocent. Jade nodded. The web was deeper than she'd imagined. And that web had a name, Leonor. Leon came back, looking worried. "She says she's fine, but that she felt something strange, like a sudden dizziness." Leonor had already composed herself. "It must be the stress. Yennefer has been working hard lately." Jade stood up. She walked firmly toward the hallway. She stopped in front of an ornate mirror. She looked at herself. She was no longer the same woman who had entered that house for the first time years ago, seeking acceptance. That night, something broke, or maybe something awakened. Behind her, Leonor appeared like a shadow. "You've changed," she said. "For better or worse?" Leonor stepped closer, her voice low, lethal. "To me, it makes no difference." Jade turned around. "That's what scares you most, isn't it? That I no longer need your approval. You've got guts. But you don't know how to play this game. I'm learning. And I'm a good student." The tension was so thick it felt like glass in the air. Leonore smiled again, that smile that no longer had any effect. Jade walked away. That night, when they left the house, Leon took Jade's hand. "Thanks for coming. I think it was a good step." Jade said nothing. In her mind, the dinner wasn't a step toward peace, it was the first shot in a silent war. A war where cutlery were daggers and salads weapons. And though no one else knew it yet, Leonore had failed. And when someone like her fails, she doesn't stop. She prepares to destroy. Jade closed her eyes for a second, took a deep breath. The game had begun, and this time she planned to win. The silence in the car was so dense it seemed to have weight. Leon kept both hands tight on the steering wheel, his eyes fixed on the road, knuckles white from tension. Jade, sitting beside him, stared out the window. Outside, the city lights passed by like mute ghosts. The air between them wasn't cold, it was deaf. After the dinner, after Yennefer's vomiting, after Leonore's shattered smile, nothing felt in its place anymore. Jade hadn't said a single word since they left the mansion, but her mind was a whirlwind. The metallic taste of the salad still seemed to linger on her tongue, even though she had only taken a symbolic bite. She remembered Leonore's look when she switched the plates, the exact way she raised just one eyebrow. That woman wasn't a mother. She was an architect of fear. "Are you okay?" Leon asked without looking at her, breaking the silence as if asking permission to breathe. Jade looked at him for a moment, weighing whether to answer or not. "I'm alive. That's something," she finally said, her voice low but full of meaning. Leon frowned but didn't reply. He knew Jade wasn't speaking in metaphors. They arrived at the apartment without saying much more. Leon locked himself in the bathroom under the pretense of taking a shower. Jade, meanwhile, sat in the dim light of the living room, the glow from the window casting long shadows across the floor. She thought of Yennefer, of her pale skin, her trembling. The worst part hadn't been seeing her get sick, it had been the indifference with which her mother watched every symptom unfold. Half an hour later, Leon emerged with damp hair, a towel still around his neck. Jade hadn't moved. "You don't think it was a coincidence," he said, more a statement than a question. "No," she replied without hesitation. "You think that?" "I don't think." "I know." Leon collapsed onto the couch in front of her, his hands hanging between his knees. Jade looked at him, feeling both compassion and anger. He was a prisoner in a gilded cage, and he didn't even know it. "There's no way my mother would," he began. "She would," Jade interrupted. "And she didn't do it because she hates me. She did it because she's afraid of me." Leon looked at her as if she were speaking a foreign language. "Afraid of you? Why?" Jade stood up and walked around the room as if searching for air. "Because she can't control me. And when you can't control someone in that house, you eliminate them. With words, with favors, or with something else." Leon rubbed his face with both hands. "Don't say that. Don't say my mother is capable of poisoning a salad? Do you want me to pretend I didn't see what I saw? That I didn't smell that strange scent? That I didn't see how she talked to you like I wasn't even there?" Silence returned, this time more cruelly. "Yennefer got sick," Leon whispered, almost to himself. "And you know why," Jade added. "But you can't accept it. Because if you do, everything you believe about your family falls apart." Leon didn't reply. He remained seated, eyes lost in thought. That night, they slept together, but not in the same bed. Jade closed the door to the guest room and didn't turn on the light. Lying there, eyes open in the dark, she listened to Leon tossing and turning in the next room. The silence hurt more than any scream. Morning came without warning. The sun brought no relief. On Jade's phone, a message appeared from an unknown number. "Can we talk?" "I'm confused." "Why?" Jade read it 3 times before replying. They agreed to meet that afternoon at a discreet cafe downtown. Yennefer arrived wearing dark sunglasses and no makeup. She had on a large jacket that didn't belong to her. When she sat down across from Jade, she didn't speak. She seemed like a different person, not the spoiled daughter. not the brilliant executive. Just a woman who had discovered she might not be untouchable. "I don't remember anything strange before eating," she said, breaking the ice. I felt fine, but by the third bite, my body started screaming. It was like everything shut down. "I saw it," Jade replied. "And I saw your mother watching you as if she was waiting." Yennefer swallowed hard. "You think she did it?" Jade didn't answer right away. She let the question hang in the air. "I do. For you. Because I was supposed to eat that plate." Yennefer took off her sunglasses. Her eyes were red. Not from crying, but from lack of sleep. Why would she do something like that? Jade placed her hands on the table. "Because to your mother, you're not a person. You're a piece on her board. She doesn't feel. She calculates. What if you're wrong?" "Am I?" Yennefer looked down. Jade knew the doubt had started to grow in her. "When I was sick, she didn't come to see me. She didn't call after. She didn't ask how I was." "Because she failed," Jade whispered. "And when she fails, she pulls away. She doesn't comfort you. She assesses you." They fell silent again, but it wasn't empty. It was understanding. That same night, Jade returned alone to the mansion. She didn't tell Leon. She knocked on the door and was greeted by Clara, the longtime maid. The woman looked at her for a few seconds longer than necessary. "Is the lady in?" "In the greenhouse." Jade headed there. The greenhouse was Leonor's favorite place, her plant kingdom. There were no cameras there, no witnesses. Just orchids and humidity. Leonor was watering some begonias. She didn't flinch when she saw Jade. "What an unexpected visit. I wanted to thank you for the dinner." Leonor set the watering can aside. It was a lovely evening, aside from Yennefer's little mishap. "Such a shame." Jade approached, unafraid. "You knew." From the first bite. Leonor didn't reply. She simply stroked a leaf gently. "You shouldn't get involved in things you don't understand." "Like power games?" "Trust me, I'm learning fast." Leonor turned her face slightly. Her expression was calm, but her eyes were sharp. "Be careful, Jade. In this family, naivety isn't forgiven. And rebellion is punished." "Like with special salads?" The tension rose. Leonor took a step toward her. "I warned you. Don't make me take measures I don't want to. You already did. And you failed." For a moment, something cracked in Leonor's eyes. A fracture. But she quickly composed herself. "This game, darling, you didn't invent it. I perfected it. And games, Leonor, always have an ending." Jade turned around and walked away. Clara was watching from the hallway. This time, Jade stopped in front of her. "That dish wasn't like the others, was it?" Clara hesitated. "I'm not the one who decides those things." "But you saw it." "I saw many things. And I learned that sometimes it's better not to speak. I didn't come to ask you to talk. I came to warn you. This is just beginning." Jade walked away. Clara stayed there, eyes on the floor, hands trembling. That night, when Leon returned to the apartment, Jade was waiting for him in the kitchen. "I went to see your mother," she said. Leon wasn't surprised. "What were you hoping to accomplish?" "To face her. And tell her I'm not afraid." Leon stepped closer. "Are you?" "A lot. But I'm not going to let this story end the way she wants it to." Leon placed his hands on the counter. His eyes were shadowed. "I don't know who to believe, Jade. All of this hurts me. You don't need to believe me. You just need to look at your mother when she talks to you. You'll see she doesn't blink anymore." He remained silent. Jade knew something inside him was starting to shift. Slowly, but it was moving. Before bed, Jade received another message. It was from Yennefer. "I need to understand more. I don't want to be just a piece." Jade turned off her phone. For the first time in years, she felt she wasn't alone in that house. That Leonor's empire had cracks. And where there are cracks, there is light. And light, no matter how faint, always spreads. Yennefer's message had been brief, but it carried more meaning than it seemed. "I need to understand more. I don't want to be just a piece." Jade read it several times that night, without replying. She knew something had shifted inside the fortress Leonore had built around her daughter. A barely visible slit, but enough for a crack to begin. And cracks, Jade thought, aren't sealed with sweet words. They only widen with truth. The next morning, Jade didn't wait. She called Yennefer directly. Her voice on the other end sounded drier than the night before, not from coldness, but from emotional exhaustion. "I want to talk to you in person," Jade said bluntly. "Where?" "Somewhere no one can see us." Half an hour later, they were sitting on a hotel terrace downtown. At that hour of the morning, only a few business people were having breakfast, too busy with their laptops to notice what was unfolding between the two women. Yennefer arrived dressed in white, as if trying to cling to some inner purity she felt was in danger. Jade, on the other hand, had chosen black, a color that demanded no explanations. "I didn't sleep," Yennefer admitted before sitting down. "I can't stop thinking about everything." "That's because, for the first time, you're thinking for yourself." Yennefer frowned. Not out of anger, but because it was uncomfortable to admit that it was true. "I need to understand. I always thought my mother was protecting me, that everything she did was for our own good. But since that dinner, I feel like there's more. Something I never saw." "You didn't feel it because you grew up inside her bubble," Jade said gently. "Because she shaped you so you wouldn't question her. Every one of your achievements was also proof of obedience." "That's not fair," Yennefer murmured, looking away. "What part isn't fair? That I'm the one saying it, or that it's true?" Yennefer closed her eyes for a second. Her face showed an internal struggle. Childhood memories hit her, one after another. Her mother praising her for winning a math contest, but only because you don't want to fall behind your cousins. Leonore brushing her hair in front of the mirror, correcting every strand with obsessive precision while whispering, "If you're not perfect, you're worthless." The nights she cried in silence, feeling like she would never be enough. "She never hugged me unless someone was watching," she said suddenly. "She never touched my face without correcting my posture afterward." Because to her, affection is a tool, not a gift. And with you, what does she want? Submission. And if she doesn't get it, then she tries everything, even poisoning a salad. Yennefer lowered her head. She didn't ask if it was true. She already knew. Deep down, she had always known. She just needed someone to say it out loud so she could stop denying it. "Do you think I'm like her?" "No," Jade said without hesitation. "But you could become her if you don't do something now." Yennefer looked up. There was fire in her eyes, not hatred. It was pain transforming into clarity. "What do you want me to do?" "Help me destroy the game." The word destroy hung between them. Yennefer didn't flinch. She nodded slowly, but with resolve. "Where do we start?" "With what she values most, control." They both knew Leonore didn't rule with sharp words alone. Her power had deeper roots. She had secrets. And a place where she kept them. "Charles," Jade said. "Your father. He knows more than he lets on. But he doesn't talk, because Leonore has something on him." "You think she's blackmailing him?" "I know she is. And I'm going to prove it." That same afternoon, Jade went to see Charles. She didn't make an appointment. She showed up in his private office with the determination of someone who stopped asking for permission. Charles, as always, was seated in his leather chair, a glass of whiskey in hand and his eyes fixed on the fireplace, though there was no fire. "Surprised to see me?" Jade asked as she entered. "Very little surprises me these days." "I'd like to believe that. But I think you're more scared than you let on." Charles didn't respond. He just turned the glass in his fingers. "I want to know what Leonore has on you," Jade said. "I didn't come to threaten you. I came to offer you a chance to be free." The man let out a short, dry laugh. "Free? You have no idea what you're saying." "I know exactly what I'm saying. Because you're not a patriarch. You're a hostage with a last name." Charles pressed his lips together. There was something in his gaze that was starting to crack. "She knows things. Things I can't let come to light." "What kind of things?" "Records. Contracts. Transactions that shouldn't exist. Stuff from when I still ran the family businesses. If they got out, they'd destroy me. Where does she keep them? Charles hesitated. Jade stepped closer. I'm not asking you to confront her. Just tell me where they are. He swallowed hard. Looked toward the bookshelf at the back. There's a safe behind the portrait of her mother. In her private office. It doesn't use a key. It's digital. The combination is her most treasured thing. Her power. No. Her mother. She uses her mother's birth year as the code. Jade nodded. Before leaving, she looked at him one last time. If you do nothing, she'll do it for you. And next time, it won't just be a salad. Charles said nothing, but his silence was its own kind of confession. Jade shared the information with Yennefer that same night. They met in the garden of the hotel where they used to attend charity events together. Now that same place had become clandestine. Are you sure you want to do this? Jade asked. I always thought betrayal was the worst thing I could do. But today I know living in silence is worse. Jade pulled out a blueprint of the mansion. She marked with pencil the secondary entrance, the hallways with the fewest cameras, the location of Leonore's office. We're not doing it tonight. But soon, very soon. What if she catches us? Then she'll know we're done pretending to be a family. Before they said goodbye, Yennefer looked at her with something close to admiration. Not the kind of respect you have for a mother, but for a woman who chose to burn rather than kneel. Jade didn't sleep that night. In her mind, the plan was already in motion. The first step had been taken. Next would be crossing the threshold of Leonore's most sacred space, her sanctuary of secrets. Meanwhile, in the mansion, Leonore wasn't sleeping either. She paced through the greenhouse as if she could hear what was being said beyond her walls. Her instinct screamed that something was shifting, that her empire, for the first time, had cracks. She stopped in front of a white orchid, the most expensive, the hardest to keep alive. Rotten roots aren't visible until it's too late, she whispered. But it wasn't too late. Not for her. Because the deadliest poison is the one that hides behind the fragrance. And Leonore had no intention of backing down without poisoning the air, even if that meant poisoning herself in the process. Yennefer was alone in her room for over an hour. She didn't move. She wasn't even blinking normally. Her eyes were fixed on the reflection in the full-length mirror that had hung on her wall since her teenage years. But the person staring back at her wasn't her usual image, the flawless figure she'd identified with for so long. Perfectly aligned hair, subtle makeup, straight shoulders, a restrained expression. No. That night, the mirror offered something else. A woman who no longer knew who she was. Who was beginning to suspect that everything she had defended, built, and admired was a copy, a replica, an illusion. She ran her hand across her face in frustration. She wanted to cry, but couldn't. Crying would have meant admitting vulnerability. And she didn't cry. She had learned that young. Strong women don't cry. Weak ones do, to ask for permission. That voice, her mother's, was embedded in the back of her mind like a permanent command. But she wasn't an obedient child anymore. Or at least, she didn't want to be. She walked to her desk, opened a hidden drawer, and took out a small brass key. She held it between her fingers for a moment, then shoved it back into the bottom of the drawer. That key opened a chest containing her childhood and teenage journals. She had written them obsessively, day after day, documenting achievements, routines, lists of merits. Everything her mother valued. But now she hated them. Not because of what they contained, but because of what they meant. She had lived as if love had to be earned instead of given. And that, she now understood, was the cruelest form of emotional education. Her phone vibrated. It was Jade. The message read, "Tonight, 2 o'clock. Service entrance. Bring gloves." Yennefer stood up. No hesitation. She dressed in black, as if attending the funeral of who she once believed she was. The mansion slept. That was its greatest weakness. Leonore never imagined betrayal would come from within. At exactly 2 a.m., Jade appeared at the side entrance. They greeted each other with a small nod. No hugs. There was no room for that. Adrenaline kept them steady. They moved through the carpeted hallways like trained shadows. Every step was calculated. Jade had memorized the route, the night staff schedule, the camera's blind spots. They reached Leonore's private office without being seen. A solid oak door separated them from the world where the matriarch's true power was kept. "Are you sure about the code?" Yennefer whispered, her pulse racing. Yes, her mother's birth year. Jade typed it in. 1934. A dull sound. The lock gave way. The door opened. The office was a dark sanctuary. Oriental rugs, a bronze desk lamp, shelves filled with books, and above the fireplace, the portrait of a woman with cold eyes, Leonore's mother. That gaze explained a lot. The genetics of contempt. They walked to the right wall. Jade located the largest painting and carefully removed it. Behind it, a built-in safe. Yennefer held the flashlight. Jade entered the code again. This time, the click was sharper. The door opened slowly. Inside, stacked folders, envelopes with private seals, USB drives, even a black notebook with gold detailing. "Start with the folders," Jade ordered. Yennefer obeyed. She pulled out one with her name. When she opened it, her chest tightened. Inside were records of her spending, bank transactions, transcripts of conversations with executives, even screenshots of private emails. What struck her most was a signed document, an authorization allowing access to her personal account in case of emergency. She didn't remember signing it. "This is illegal," she whispered, trembling. Not to her. For Leonore, anything she can't control, she documents. And everything she documents, she owns. Jade was looking through another folder. Her name was on it. Inside, a contract drafted by family lawyers. It stated that if Leon chose to divorce her, she would lose all stake in the family business. Not only that, it also included a clause declaring Jade mentally unstable in case she ever went public against Leonore. This isn't just control. This is premeditation. Do you think she's spying on us too? I'm sure. And not just with cameras. They pulled out a USB and inserted it into the laptop Jade had brought. Encrypted files. One labeled Charles. "That's Leon's father," said Yennefer. "And his wife's hostage." The files showed money transfers to Swiss accounts. There were also emails between Charles and a local politician mentioning suspicious bidding contracts. Jade didn't know if any of it was technically illegal, but she knew Leonore was using it as a weapon. "So what now?" Yennefer asked. "We take copies. Enough to gain leverage. Not everything. Not yet." They took photographs, refiled documents into new folders. They moved with the urgency of those who know everything could explode at any moment. And it did. The door opened with a soft creak. They both turned. Leonore was standing there. Still. Impeccable. Not a hair out of place. Dressed in an ivory silk robe. Holding a glass of wine. "How disappointing," she said, her voice calm. Yennefer slowly lowered the folder in her hands. Jade didn't blink. "You were spying on us?" Leonore walked in with elegance. Closed the door behind her. "I don't spy. I anticipate." "And what kind of mother anticipates her daughter?" Yennefer shot back. Leonore smiled gently. "The kind of mother who has no room for mistakes. Or betrayals." Jade stepped forward. "Yennefer isn't betraying you. She's just seeing what you always hid." "And what are you?" "Her savior," Leonore asked, locking eyes with Jade. "You came into this house with clean hands. Now they're covered in mud. Does that make you proud?" "I'm proud I never kneeled." Leonore glanced around the office. "What do you think you've discovered? Papers? Accounts? Contracts? Evidence," Jade said. "That your power is just an illusion sustained by fear." Yennefer spoke up, her voice defiant for the first time. "Why do you keep this?" "What for?" Leonore turned to her with a look of feigned compassion. "To protect you, daughter." to protect all of us. People are volatile. They fail. They lie. They sell out. I only did what was necessary. And me? Am I part of your files too? One of your guarantees. Leonore didn't answer. The silence was enough. Jade closed the folder. She slipped the USB drive into her bag. This changes the rules. Leonore crossed her arms. Her eyes were colder than ever. You think having information gives you power, but you don't understand the ground you're standing on. I don't need to understand it. I just need to set it on fire. Leonore walked over to Yennefer. She gently touched her face. You're still my daughter. Despite everything, Yennefer pulled away. I don't know what that means anymore. Leonore lowered her hand. Her expression flickered for a moment, just a second, and then she straightened up again. You have 5 minutes to disappear from here. After that, the conversation is over. Jade looked at her one last time before leaving. It's already over, Leonore. You're just the last to know. They left without another word. Walked down the hallway like they'd just crossed a battlefield. Each step, a statement. They weren't the same women who had walked in that night. They had seen the core of the beast, and they were ready to strike from within. Yennefer paused as they exited. You think she'll hurt us? Yes, but now she bleeds too. And for the first time in a long while, Yennefer smiled. Not because she felt at peace, but because she was awake. And a woman who's awake, once she's shaken off her cage, can be more dangerous than any empire built on fear. Leonore didn't close the door to her office after Jade and Yennefer left. She left it open like a silent warning, as if their absence were part of a larger choreography. The office remained lit, untouched, but every folder out of place, every page disturbed, felt like a desecration to her. She didn't flinch in front of the mirror hanging above her desk. She just looked at herself, expressionless. Then she slowly took off her robe and put on a dark dress. No one was to see her with wrinkled armor. No one. At 7 in the morning, the mansion's kitchen coffee maker began its usual cycle. Clara, the longest-serving housemaid, noticed something different in her mistress's face as she entered the dining room. Leonore didn't say good morning. She didn't even ask for coffee. She just held Clara's gaze and said softly, "Today, I will not allow mistakes." The woman lowered her head and said nothing more. Leon called 2 hours later. He sounded agitated. Leonore answered on the second ring. "Mother, I need to talk to you. It's urgent." Leonore replied without hesitation. "Come home." Leon arrived alone. Jade didn't come with him, and that was exactly how Leonore had planned it. The living room was pristine, scented with white lilies, the curtains open just enough to let in the right amount of light to make the scene feel honest. Leonore offered him mint tea. He accepted it awkwardly and didn't even notice it hadn't been there when he walked in. Leonore had brought it from the kitchen seconds before he arrived. Control. Always control. "They told me you went into my office last night," she said bluntly, sitting across from her son. Leon frowned. "Who told you that?" "That doesn't matter. What matters is knowing why Jade did it." "Why her?" Leon swallowed hard. "She thinks there are things that shouldn't be hidden." Leonore let out a brief, dry laugh. "And you believe her?" He looked at her, but couldn't hold her gaze. "I don't know, Mother. I don't know what to think." Yennefer was there too. Leonore tilted her head. "And since when does my family need to break in like thieves to know what's going on in this house? So you're confirming it? That you keep documents on all of us? They're not secrets. They're precautions. The difference lies in the intent." Leon pressed his lips together. "Jade says you manipulate me. That this is all a way to control us. To turn us into pieces on a board." Leonore stood slowly, walked to him, and placed a hand on his shoulder. "My son, listen to me carefully. That woman came into this family with a mission. To seduce you, marry you, and then destroy from within everything we worked so hard to build. Do you think she's doing it out of love? Or ambition?" Leon stood up abruptly. "Don't say that. She loves me. I know her. Leonore didn't flinch. Do you know her better than you know your mother? Silence. She's pulling you away from your sister, your father, from me. Don't you see it? Leon took a step back. I need to think. Leonore nodded softly. Think, but don't take too long. A broken family can't be mended with excuses. And when she's gone, I'll still be here. Leon left confused, the cup still in his hand. He hadn't taken a single sip. Meanwhile, Jade waited at home. She had the USB copy locked away, the folders hidden among her books. But what hurt the most was something else, that Leon hadn't come home the night before. That he hadn't said a word when he left. The silence of a man beginning to doubt is worse than a shout of accusation. Yennefer showed up at her apartment unannounced. Jade opened the door, her face still marked by insomnia. She's doing it, Yennefer said bluntly. My mother. She's planting the idea in Leon's mind that you're the threat. She's manipulating him. He doesn't see it, but I do. And you? Are you sure you won't fall into her game again? Yennefer lifted her chin. I was raised not to think. Now I can't stop. Jade let her in. The two sat in silence. They shared a bitter coffee that tasted more like strategy than breakfast. We can't wait anymore, Jade said. Having evidence isn't enough. She's controlling the narrative. We need to break that. Yennefer nodded. Give me a day. I'll do my part. And she did. That night, Yennefer returned to the mansion. Leonore was waiting in the greenhouse, gently watering her plants. The air smelled of moisture and silence. You've been busy, Leonore said without turning around. I wanted to see if what Jade said was true. And it is. Leonore turned slowly. She placed the watering can on the table and walked toward her daughter. Her gaze was no longer that of a mother. It was that of a general facing betrayal. I built you, she said, each syllable dripping with ancient venom. Every word you speak, every gesture you make, I taught you. You belong to me. Yennefer didn't move. She felt the fury in her gut, but didn't let it rise as rage. She shaped it into resolve. And that's why I don't want to be a part of you anymore. Leonore looked at her as if she no longer recognized her. You don't know what this world is. You think you can walk it alone. But you won't last without me. I don't want to last. I want to live. And not in a prison with expensive curtains. Do you know what this will do to your father? He's already destroyed. You dragged him down with you. Leonore hesitated for a moment. Then she turned her back. There's no going back after this. And there's no freedom if I stay by your side. Yennefer walked away. As she passed the portrait of her grandmother, she didn't look at it. She no longer needed to honor faces that never embraced her. In her room, Leonore didn't sleep. She didn't cry. But she started writing a letter, not with ink, but with cold blood. It was a formal complaint. A legal document to initiate a restraining order against Jade for allegedly threatening family security. Her signature at the bottom was flawless. The next morning, Leon returned to the apartment. Jade was in the kitchen. He didn't speak when he entered. He stood there, watched her for a full minute. Did you confront her? She asked, without turning. Yes. And? She said you're trying to destroy the family. And did you believe her? Leon stepped closer. Jade didn't move. I don't want to believe it, but part of me doubts. Do you understand? Jade turned to him, looked him in the eyes. You don't have to believe me. You just have to stop pretending your mother isn't what she is. Leon took a deep breath. It hurts. It's hard. I know. But while you decide, I won't wait for you to stand up. Because if I stay still, she wins. And what if you're wrong? Then I'll fall with dignity. But I won't let myself be poisoned. Leon lowered his head. I need time. Take it. But don't take too long. Because this war has already begun. When Leon left, Jade broke down in tears. Not from weakness, but because loving someone who refuses to see the truth is a very slow way to die. That night, Leonore received a call from her lawyer. He had received a copy of the stolen documents, anonymous, with a note, The foundation has been exposed. The roof will fall on its own. Leonore hung up. Then she looked at herself in the mirror. Her reflection was still flawless. But for the first time, she had to raise her chin with effort not to see the crack running through her soul. Jade didn't need to destroy her. She already had, with a truth that couldn't be erased. Even the most powerful queen begins to tremble when she is left alone. Even if she doesn't admit it. Even if she doesn't show it. Even if her empire still stands, the walls already know they're doomed. And that silent whisper is the only thing that keeps awake the one who ruled the world from a table decorated with lies. Leonore was sitting in front of the main hall's window when the first call came in. She didn't answer. The number was from a journalist. The second ring was from Charles's assistant. The third, from a reporter known for her ruthless reputation. She picked up the phone and set it on the table without unlocking it. Her world was beginning to burn, and she watched it with the tense calm of someone who has spent a lifetime building walls, so at least the fire wouldn't spread too fast. Outside, the morning advanced without mercy. In the streets, newspapers carried a headline that needed no adjectives to shock. Leaked documents reveal manipulation network in the de la Vega family. The article was signed by a respected journalist and accompanied by scanned images of legal contracts, confidential documents, bank transfers, and fragments of personal emails. Everything was there, exposing the guts of the empire. The de la Vega name no longer smelled of legacy, but of rot. In the apartment, Jade watched it from her screen as the coffee cup trembled in her hands. Not from fear, but from the emotional discharge of years held in. From knowing she had crossed the point of no return. Leon got up later than usual. He walked toward her with a shattered expression, silent. He looked at the article over her shoulder. The blood drained from his face. Was it you? Jade didn't respond with words. She simply closed the screen and looked at him with tired eyes. Do you think it deserved to end in silence? She asked, without a hint of provocation. Leon buried his face in his hands. He took a few steps around the room, as if trying to put space between himself and the inevitable. This is going to destroy her, he whispered. She was already destroyed. She just wrapped herself in flowers and fancy dinners. And my father? He let it all happen. He just sat there and watched while she tied us up with invisible strings. You know it. This is killing me, Leon admitted. Jade stood and approached him. It was killing me before. And no one noticed. Leon collapsed onto the couch. For the first time, his mask as the devoted son, the absent husband, the silent brother, all of it shattered. What do you want me to do? Choose. Between my mother and you? No. Between the truth and fear. The de la Vega mansion turned into a hive of whispers. Employees walked in short, hurried steps. Doors shut more quickly. Phones wouldn't stop ringing. Yennefer returned that same afternoon. She didn't bother to hide her intentions. She entered with firm steps, a folder tucked under her arm. Leonore was in the library, surrounded by her books, as if the words of others could shield her from her own. When she saw her enter, she slowly looked up. I hope you're satisfied, Leonore said, her tone no longer sharp. I'm at peace, Yennefer replied. Something you've never known. Leonore leaned back in her chair. What do you want now? To keep digging my grave in public. I just want to say this, and I want you to remember it until your last day. You weren't a mother. You were a dictator in velvet gloves. And no one fears you anymore. Leonore closed her eyes for a second. I protected you. You imprisoned us. All of us. And now you all run like wounded animals, Leonore answered softly, because you don't know how to live outside a cage. Let's not speak anymore, said Yennefer. She placed the folder on the table. These are the statements I'll make. I'm no longer talking behind your back. I'll speak in front of everyone. With my name. With my face. Without fear. Leonore didn't look at her. She just stared at the folder as if it were a biological threat. You've condemned your own blood, she murmured. No. I'm purifying it. Hours later, The entire family was summoned to the mansion. No one knew exactly why, but everyone sensed that something final was about to happen. Charles arrived last, his face pale, looking older than he had just 2 days before. Leonor appeared before them in a black dress with flawless hair. At her side, a silence that followed her like a shadow. Jade arrived with Leon. Yennefer was already seated. No one spoke during the first few minutes. It was Charles who broke the silence. "I've read the documents. All of them. And they're true." Leonor slowly turned her face toward him. "You're going to judge me?" "No," he said, his voice rough. "That's not my place anymore. Because I handed you the power and now we're paying the price." Leonor seemed ready to argue, but she didn't. Her husband's silence was a dagger she hadn't expected. Yennefer spoke up. "This all happened because we learned that love should never be a threat. That a family can't be built on fear. That a fancy dinner doesn't erase silent screams." "And you, Jade?" Leonor finally asked. "Do you feel like you've won?" Jade took a deep breath. "No. I feel free, even if it hurts." Leonor stood up. She looked at each of them carefully. There were tears in her eyes, but not from sadness. They were stagnant with fury. "You don't understand what I did, or why I did it. And it doesn't matter anymore," Charles said calmly. "Because the damage is done. You blame me for not being sweet. For not giving hugs," said Leonor. "But if I hadn't been the way I was, none of you would have what you have. I built this house. I made the sacrifices. And now you call me a monster." "A sacrifice that devours its children isn't nobility," Yennefer replied. Leonor looked at Leon one last time. "You too." He didn't speak. He walked over to Jade and took her hand. It wasn't a rebellious gesture. It was one of truth. And then, something in Leonor broke. She didn't scream. She didn't fall. She just sat down, as if her body had stopped responding. And for the first time, she had no speech prepared. No rehearsed phrases. Just a woman alone, facing the mirror life was now holding up to her. The meeting ended without ceremony. Yennefer walked out with her head held high. Charles locked himself in his study. Leon and Jade returned to their apartment in silence, but with a shared certainty, they had crossed a threshold. They were no longer hostages. That night, the mansion fell silent. But it wasn't the silence of elegance. It was the silence of a queen without a throne, without an audience, with no battles left to win. Only memories that no one wanted to hear anymore. On television, the news went on. The De La Vega name became a topic of analysis, interviews, and debate. Some defended Leonor as a woman of her time. Others saw her as a symbol of everything wrong with power-driven family structures. But in a corner of the screen, one image kept playing. Yennefer, walking confidently, speaking to cameras, saying words that no longer trembled. Jade watched from her living room. And she knew that the story they had lived was no longer just theirs. It had entered the world. As a warning. As a truth. As a mirror. And in that new reflection, Leonor had no place. Because once fear is broken, not even the most feared name can stop the echo of freedom. The mansion still stood, but it was no longer an empire. The walls were still adorned with the same gilded paintings, the chandeliers still hung with majesty, and the silk rugs still softened every step with their usual elegance. But none of it meant power anymore. Not anymore. Now it was just the silent backdrop of a void that grew unchecked. Leonor had not left the house. Not because she cared to keep it, but because she didn't know how to exist anywhere else. The house was her truest reflection, grand, cold, perfectly designed, and completely alone. Since the public collapse, she had barely spoken. Not to Charles. Not to Yennefer. Least of all to Leon. The calls stopped coming. The social invitations vanished. Her name no longer opened doors, it only provoked whispers. Still, every morning she dressed as if attending a gala. She sat for tea as if someone might arrive. But no one came. And no one would. When Jade appeared, Leonore wasn't surprised. She watched her cross the threshold with the determination of someone who seeks no permission. She didn't invite her to sit. Jade didn't ask. She stood before her, no kind gestures, no pretenses. I didn't come to humiliate you, Jade said. I don't need to anymore. Leonore looked up with a tired expression. So you came for what? To finish killing me with your compassion. No. I came to tell you what no one else dared to say all these years. Leonore took a sip of her tea. Jade watched her closely. She no longer saw the imposing woman who once controlled her with subtle glances and poisoned phrases. Only a hollow figure held together by the habit of power. You never had a family, Jade said firmly. You had pawns. Pieces on a board that only you moved. And still, they all obeyed me, Leonore replied, without strength. Because you taught them that disobedience meant death. But obeying you killed them inside, too. Leonore lowered her gaze. Her lower lip trembled slightly. You won, Jade. I don't see it as a victory. No one wins when a family breaks. But someone had to put out the fire. A long silence followed. Outside, the wind stirred the garden branches, as if even nature wanted to disturb the place's rigidity. Do you think I regret it? Leonore asked, staring out the window. I doubt it. Because to regret something, you have to have loved first. That sentence landed like a blade. Leonore closed her eyes. For the first time in years, her tears weren't a tool. They were real. And so, she didn't wipe them away. My mother taught me that love was weakness, she whispered. That hugging was surrender. And you turned that inheritance into doctrine, Jade replied. But power doesn't hug. And control doesn't comfort. Leonore didn't respond. She just nodded slightly, as if accepting, too late, what had always been obvious. Jade left without saying goodbye. She didn't need to. Meanwhile, Yennefer had temporarily moved into Jade and Leon's apartment. The space was warm, though small. The dinners were simple, the conversations genuine. For the first time, Yennefer ate without analyzing every bite, laughed without calculating anyone's reaction. Freedom wasn't a concept to her. It was a new feeling, uncomfortable, liberating. Hard to accept. But she didn't want to let it go. One night, as Jade prepared tea, Yennefer approached with a notebook. I wrote something. I don't know if it's good. It just came out. Jade took the notebook. She read in silence. It was a letter addressed to her mother. It carried no resentment, nor forgiveness, just truth. Words describing what it was like to grow up with someone who confused love with power. One line stood out. I don't want to hate you, but I no longer want to remember you as the owner of my story. It's honest, Jade said. That alone makes it valuable. Yennefer nodded. I thought about publishing it. Do it. Someone out there might be trapped the way you were. Elsewhere in the city, Leon was beginning to breathe differently. He had resigned from his position at the family company, by choice. He could no longer be part of a system born from control. He now worked as a financial advisor at a small firm. No one there knew his last name. They only knew he was punctual, attentive, and sometimes stared out the window longer than necessary. He was learning to exist without the weight of being someone's son. And that was harder than any job. Charles, for his part, had started speaking again. Not with authority, but with humanity. He met with former associates he had once betrayed, admitted his mistakes, repaid favors that hadn't been asked for. For the first time in his life, he used his last name without the shield of his wife. And in every conversation, when asked about Leonore, he gave the same answer. She knew how to protect us. But she forgot to love us. The de la Vega name ceased to be an empire. The mansion wasn't sold, but its windows stayed shut. The gardens grew wild. The press no longer spoke of them. Some new scandal filled the headlines. As always, one morning, Yennefer received a message from a young woman she didn't know. It read, I read your letter. You gave me the courage to leave the house where I was never free. Thank you. That was the sign she needed. She kept writing. turned her pain into stories. Her past was no longer a source of shame. It became a form of resistance. Jade and Leon, meanwhile, decided to do more with the documents they still held. Not to destroy, but to expose how abuse can disguise itself as structure. With help from an organization that fights coercive control, they anonymously submitted part of the material. A journalist contacted them weeks later. She wanted to interview them. Not just about the scandal, but about the emotional process of breaking free. Leon hesitated. Jade didn't. Yennefer agreed. And in front of the cameras, she said what everyone needed to hear. Power can build a house, a family name, a fortune. But if there is no sincere love, all of that is just a glass cage. Shiny on the outside, empty on the inside. Leonore watched the interview from her living room. She didn't cry. She didn't throw the remote. She just stayed seated, her gaze fixed on the screen. When the program ended, she turned off the TV and went out to the garden. She knelt in front of one of the orchids she always cared for. For the first time, she let the mud dirty her hands. She said nothing. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She just stayed there, breathing. Maybe for the first time in a long time as a woman. Not as a queen. Not as a strategist. Not as a monster. Just a woman alone in the garden of a life she built with the wrong tools. And as the sun began to set, the mansion no longer felt so empty. Because even broken empires can bloom if someone decides to plant something different on the ruins. Even if it's just a flower. Even if only those who dare to look beyond power see it. That was the legacy left behind. Not the family name. Not the fortune. Not the made-up story. But the truth. And the love that, despite everything, was still possible. If you liked this story, I invite you to leave a comment sharing how it made you feel. And if you've experienced a similar betrayal, I'd love for you to share your valuable opinion. Remember to tell me which city you're watching this video from. I would feel very honored if you leave a like, share the video with a friend or family member, and subscribe to the channel. Don't miss the next surprising story that's appearing on your screen right now. We have guaranteed entertainment exclusively for you. See you in the next video.